What's going on, my London Reacts fam? Today we've got a different sort of video. I'm going for a little bit of an educational one, a historical one, and maybe opinionated, maybe objective, maybe subjective. Let's see. But the statement that I heard is that African American English has more complexities and is a more complex dialect or language, however you want to look at it, than the typical English that you're taught in schools. So I thought, you know what, let's check it out. Let's see why that is. Let's see how that is.
Here's a really spicy claim.
What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna let it rock out, and then, maybe I'll interject here or there, but for the most part, I'm gonna listen, try and take the knowledge in, and then give my opinion on it. But yeah, don't forget, if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button, and make sure you smash the like button as well. Make sure this hits the algorithm. But let's see what he's saying.
Black English, the language variety indigenous to the United States,
Black
developed
English.
by black people who were the descendants of formerly enslaved Africans. That's more complex and more sophisticated than the academic English that we all learned in the classroom. Stick with me on this one. I recently gave a keynote speech at the American Association of Electronic Reporters and Transcribers,
Okay.
where I talked about accents and non-standard dialects and all the challenges that those pose for transcription, and especially for human transcriptionists who want to be better than AI. And I made that claim.
To be fair, just off of that alone, that makes sense. Because I don't know if you guys have experienced it, but a lot of songs on Spotify, the lyrics are not actually right, or they're not in the right context, or they take the words out of the correct use, if that makes sense.
And it seemed to surprise people. And I get it. I get it.
Never heard the
Probably
phrase
going,
black
"Wait, is he
English.
talking about Ebonics?" And sort of. I'll explain that too. But whatever you call it, a lot of people have the stereotype that it's lazy, that it's bad English, and that it flouts or completely disregards the entire concept of grammar. And that's wrong. That could not be further from the truth.
That is a bad stereotype.
Than you probably know. So stick around and I'll explain why exactly I say Black English, African American language, Ebonics, is more grammatically complex than you might think.
Grammatically
and more
complex.
Sophisticated than it's given credit for. I'm
Okay.
Dr. Taylor Jones and I'm finna blow your mind.
Pause.
I'm Dr. Taylor Jones and this is Language Jones.
Language Jones.
You probably know as Ebonics and what I promise you this is not a gimmick. What you probably know as Ebonics and what linguists call African American English or African American language or sometimes
Never
Black
heard that
English,
phrase.
the
Black English or Ebonics.
is way more grammatically complex and subtle and nuanced and yes, sophisticated than people think. But that's
All right.
the reputation it has.
Let's get into
first,
it.
why the reputation, and then I'll tell you all about the more complex grammar, which is really cool. Before I continue, I just want to add that I'm working on a book right now about how Black English has shaped all of American English, but its impact is in many ways invisible or even actively erased.
Is this a little ad?
It is, and I'm more likely to get complicated history with race. That's an understatement. Anybody watching this probably knows that what is now the U.S. had complicated history with race. First, teeny tiny history lesson.
All right, let's go.
America has a complicated history with race. That's an understatement. Anybody watching this probably knows that what is now the U.S. had hundreds of years of chattel slavery in which Africans and later their descendants were enslaved in the American South. And yes, other groups were enslaved and have been throughout history, but in the U.S., the Irish ran away and then claimed they weren't Irish and nobody could tell, and the indigenous people ran away and then got really good at staying away because they already knew the terrain better. They were here first. Slavers very quickly settled on bringing Africans who, if they even survived the trip, were in a foreign land, stood out wherever they went, and were thrown in with people who didn't speak the same languages.
That's so true.
Kind of an important part here. You have lots of people who are native speakers of Bantu languages, but who are forced to communicate.
Of what?
You have lots of people who are native speakers of Bantu languages,
Bantu
but who are forced
languages.
to communicate using either the plantation Creole or some form of English. Now's not the time to go into all the detail about the linguistic arguments about the genesis of African American English, and in fact, we can never really know because we have insufficient and wildly unreliable records. It's a hugely contentious issue in linguistics.
Really racist
And
people.
that
Makes
unreliability
sense.
of records is kind of the point. The U.S. has a mainstream culture that stereotypes black people as lazy and unintelligent, and it comes in large part out of our history of slavery and Jim Crow. Unintelligent is a justification for forcing people to do manual labor they don't want to do, and lazy is one way of looking at their resisting literal slavery. You go pick tobacco in Maryland in June and get back to me about how enthusiastic you are about doing that all day, every day. Until after the Civil War, black Americans were denied even basic education, albeit with some exceptions, And it wasn't until the middle of the 20th century that they were guaranteed equal and not separate access to education, at least on paper. But also, we tend to overstate the importance of formal education and academic norms around the right way to speak. Any language you could name, including the fancy educated ones like Latin, were developed by illiterate people. Literally, since language
Okay.
change is driven by kids. So, over the last 400 years, black Americans have developed a distinct language variety. Not all black Americans, obviously, and in fact, more than one variety. Gullah and Black English are not the same. Ebonics actually historically referred to all the different language varieties that came out of the New World contact between West African languages and European colonial languages. So technically, Brazilian Portuguese, Haitian Creole, and Gullah are all Ebonics too. But the point is that it is its own distinct language variety. Maybe a dialect of English, maybe a decreolized Creole. As I've said in other videos, it has rules. This means that it's not just breaking the rules of...
To be fair, when he said that, I was just thinking, obviously my background, my family background is Jamaica and Guyana, South America, but obviously they're both ex-colonies of England, and they both have English as their main language, but the dialect and the, I guess, grammar is very complex. It's very, very different from your standard English, and I guess English would call it broken English, which is another topic for another day. But yeah, I'm just thinking it is quite complex and quite unique. And I guess a lot of people outside of the culture, maybe listening, you can understand like pockets and words and sentences, but there's definitely a complexity to it that people wouldn't understand, and maybe the context of the way that they say certain things.
Creole. As I've said in other videos, it has rules. This means that it's not just breaking the rules of classroom English. It's a language variety with highly regular, highly systematic rules.
Yeah, their own
Rules are
language.
just different from classroom English. And that's where we get to my claim that it's more complicated and sophisticated. I'm
Okay.
not saying the dudes on the corner outside in Harlem where I live, hanging out and smoking, are necessarily more
What did it say?
dudes on the corner outside in Harlem where I live, hanging out and smoking.
Charlie Brown looking ass white boy in JNCOs is somehow the best bureau. Okay.
Necessarily
What's a
more
JNCO?
sophisticated by our cultural standards than the Ivy League professors teaching down the street of Columbia in their tweed or whatever. But I am absolutely saying that their language use is grammatically more sophisticated than the English being taught to those Ivy League legacy students in their first year writing
Got you.
classes.
I got
Hear
you.
me out. A lot of you like my channel for language learning and linguistics content about other languages. Many know that I'm big on thinking about how languages treat tense, aspect, and mood. If you haven't watched my video,
Tense, aspect, mood. Tense, when it happened. Past, present, future. Aspect. I don't know what aspect is. I don't know, to be fair. And mood is obviously emotion, I'm guessing.
about these, all you really need to know is that we have used the word tense in English to refer to all three. To grossly oversimplify, tense actually refers to whether some shape of the verb indicates when something happens.
Okay.
Aspect indicates whether it's thought of as ongoing or completed, and mood
Okay.
refers to something that indicates in some way how the speaker feels about what they're talking about. Some languages have only tense or only aspect. So, for instance, Mandarin Chinese has aspect but not tense. Biblical Hebrew had aspect.
There's
but
no
not
tense.
Modern Hebrew has tense and aspect.
That's
a bit
crazy.
iffy. In English, we have modal verbs like you should do this or you must do that, but other languages can modify basically anything. So you have
I didn't
things
get
like
that.
the subjunctive that indicates doubt about the proposition. It also does other stuff that's more structural because languages are messy. So the point here is when I say Black English is more complicated and sophisticated, what I mean is that the grammatical system of tense, aspect, and mood in Black English makes more and more nuanced distinctions.
Got you. So I think basically what he's trying to say is the way that the way that Black American English, I don't know. I want to say Black English, not just Black American English. Obviously, I think Black American English has probably shaped a lot of it, but I would say Black English because I'm obviously from a UK perspective, and what he's basically saying is the nuances in the way that certain things are said mean different things, whereas I guess in your typical school taught English, it's a little bit more black and white. You're taught one way of saying something or a way of constructing a sentence. Whereas I would say Black English, you probably have a few different ways of saying something, or you could say something and flip a couple words around and they mean completely different things, or I think that's what he means. That's the way I'm interpreting it.
Where it gets confusing is that it does so with basically the same words, just used differently. Dr. Arthur Spears calls these camouflage constructions. So let me give two
Okay.
examples. The most famous in linguistics is what is sometimes called habitual be. I actually don't really like the name and prefer the less used invariant be because it has more functions than marking habituality, but that is
Habitual
so if
be.
I say it be that way, that doesn't
It be that way.
mean the same thing as it is that way.
It be that way. It is that way. Yeah. I mean, it is that way is, that's like I guess it's like it's stamped, it's guaranteed. It's a final, that is the way that it is. There's no room for debate. Whereas it be that way, I guess would be more, it can be that way. It's a bit more, sometimes it can be like that. Sometimes it can't. Sometimes it's fine, Like a black guy gets profiled on the street, he might say, it be like that, sometimes that's just how it be.
When you add the word sometimes, both end up meaning the same thing, but it be that way on its own has built in that it is that way sometimes and
Yeah.
not necessarily right now. These can lead to miscommunications where people who don't speak Black English think that they understand what's being said, but they're missing some of the nuance. And instead of recognizing that, they usually think that the Black English speaker is just using bad grammar. So if I say,
I feel like everybody would. I don't know. Maybe it's just the day and age now, or maybe because over here we obviously are exposed to a lot of American content. But I would say everybody could understand both phrases exactly as it's been said. But I don't know though. Actually, when I think about it, maybe some proper posh people over here would have no idea.
I'm going to call him at work, and my friend says, nah, he don't be at work. I might understand the social communicative function of that speech act and choose not to call him, but I might miss the nuance. He isn't usually at work, so it's probably not a good bet, but my friend is not asserting that they know.
Yeah, he don't be at work. He might be there, but he's not actually there. Like as you guys see when I do my reactions. Obviously, I'm working. My laptop's here. It's on. You might hear a notification. So technically, I be at work, but I don't be at work. If you know what I mean. Like I don't be working. Or I guess in the more literal way, he don't actually be at work. So the odds of you actually getting through to him is probably unlikely. But he could also be at work, It's not saying I know for certain that he's not at work. He's just saying, he don't be at work, just off of, I guess, what you know about the person.
He isn't at work right now. In fact, it could be the case that he don't usually be at work, but in an unforeseen turn of events,
exactly.
He's there right now. Did you notice, by the way, that you can optionally delete the present indicative form of to be, just like in Hebrew, Russian, Arabic, Mandarin, and
What do you mean?
other languages? Habitual be isn't just about the habits, but can also be about generic states. Dr. Lisa Green calls the trickier abstract form bicycle sentences after an example from a famous interview where the speaker said something along the lines of, some of them be big and some of them be small. This doesn't mean
some of them be big and some of them be small. I don't know. Is there any other way to interpret that? Some be big and some be small.
that each bicycle is usually big but sometimes small, like the magic school bus. And invariant be is just the tip of the iceberg. There's stressed been, which indicates remote perfect. You know how saying I have been in English means it started in the past and it's relevant to the present, especially in like British English?
That's true. I have been okay recently.
Remote been usually indicates completion in the distant past and relevance to the present. So if I say, I've been told you that.
I've been told you that. I've been told you that. As in, like this ain't my first time telling you. Like I told you this ages ago. I've been told you that. I guess in a far time in the past.
It doesn't mean I've been telling you that. It means I told you that a long time ago, dummy. Linguists did an informal study of white school teachers in Harlem in the 1970s and asked teachers, if your student says they've been did their homework, is it completed? Or are they still working on it?
I've been did my homework. It's completed. How could you interpret that any other way? I've been did my homework. I've been done that. It's been done ages ago. I don't know. I don't get how people can interpret that another way.
And the majority of the teachers got it wrong. Using the dialect
crazy.
they speak at home to teach them literacy and then using the ability to read and write to teach them academic English was actually the proposal that kicked off the Oakland Ebonics controversy. Black English also has many more modal verbs than classroom English, although many of you might be familiar with them from social media or from them slowly
What's a
being
modal
adopted
word?
into the mainstream. There's the future modal finna, originally from the
Finna. Gonna. I'm gonna do.
very southern fixing oneself to do something. In the South, everybody uses it. In the
Finna.
North, it was historically only speakers of Black English.
We don't use the word finna over here. I think probably if you hear people over here saying finna, they're just trying to be American. Like we just hear that in like shows, social media, that sort of stuff. We definitely don't be saying finna. Gonna, we say. I'm gonna do that.
Though that's changing. There's tryna, which does not mean trying to.
Trying to don't mean trying to. I'm trying to go out. I'm trying to see what you want. I'm trying to see what you want. I don't know. How does it not mean trying to? Trying to.
I'm going to say that again. Tryna does not mean trying to. It's a future modal that indicates intent, not attempt.
Let me hear that one more time.
Not mean trying to. It's a future modal that indicates intent, not attempt.
Intent, not attempt. I get it. Because if I was to say, I'm trying to see a Rams game when I come to the States, I'm not physically trying to see that game right now. You know, it's just the terminology of what I want to do in the future. Okay, I get that.
That's how you can get a question.
We use the word trying over here, obviously. I feel like British. I don't feel like that's Black English, to be honest. Maybe that's where it originated, but I feel like everybody uses trying, especially over here in Britain. Like I feel like people just, it's all about how quick you can get a word off. You know, I'm trying to go get some food. I'm gonna go eat. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other words. I'm about to go out. You know, about I don't know. You know. I feel like there's a lot of abbreviations that people use.
Like when you're trying to leave. The same is the case for boughter. And there's further reduction
Boughter.
of gonna to go and own.
Yeah, gonna. We say gonna.
Have different gradations of meaning when it comes to time. And not only does Black English have more grammatical distinctions in terms of time and aspect, but you can combine them. So you could have been gone there.
You could have been gone there. Like you're basically saying, why are you still here? You could have, like, the amount of time you're here, you could have been there already.
And you been could have gone there.
You been could have gone there. You been could have gone there. They're quite similar. You could have been gone there. You been could have gone there. You been could have gone there. I don't know.
Have different implications. Leave me a comment, by the way, if you think you can explain the difference.
You could have been gone there. I'm trying to explain it properly. I feel like in my head I can understand the difference, but I'm trying to put it into words is quite hard. You could have been gone there. Is like, why are you still here? You know, you could have been gone there. Like, you could have been made that trip, and it could have been done by now. You could have been gone there, and then you been could have gone there. I guess that's more like what are you waiting for? You know, you been could have gone there. I don't know. I don't know how to put it into words.
So what you have is a very robust grammatical system, but one that's built in part by using slightly different versions of the same words to do very different things. This has a few repercussions. First, because the words all sound like words other English speakers use, a lot of people completely fail to recognize they're being used to do something different. You'll almost certainly see this in the comments on this video. People who don't speak Black English will assume they know what is meant and not realize that they're shoehorning a different grammatical construction into one they already feel familiar with.
You talking about me over here? That's exactly what I'm doing. Nah, I think I probably understand the majority. I ain't gonna say I'm perfect, but I think I can understand the context of what it's being used in and why. But maybe my definitions ain't quite there. So don't slander me in the comments. Give me a bit of peace. See, there's another one. Gimme.
Second, that process combined with stereotypes just kind of erase that Black English exists. If you think I just talk lazy or have bad grammar, then you won't be attuned to the difference in meaning when I say, he don't be over there. You might think it's...
He don't be over there. As in, he don't be over there, innit? Like, how can you misinterpret that? He's not saying that he's not there right now, but he's saying, like, typically he ain't over there. or you ain't gonna find him there. You could find him there.
A sentence like, he ain't working there today, but he be working there, is contradictory gibberish.
He ain't working there today, but he be working there. I mean, that's the same as what I kind of explained before with me. He ain't working at the moment, but he be working. He online, but he ain't working.
You might not recognize that Oscar Gamble's famous quote, "They don't think it be that way, but it do," is both grammatical.
They don't think it be that way, but it do. I like that phrase. They don't think it be like that, but it do.
Recognize that Oscar Gamble's famous quote, "They don't think it be that way, but it do," is both grammatically correct for that dialect and perfectly clear.
How can you interpret that as not being clear? That's what I don't get. They don't think it be that way, but it do. I guess in proper English it would be, but it does. But it do. I don't know. How can you interpret that wrong?
They don't think it's usually that way, but it is usually that way. And lastly, because the first 2 points, people might get it wrong and not realize it. I mentioned this in my video on the word woke, and I've also mentioned this in interviews, but it's totally possible to get Black English wrong, and plenty of people do.
Probably
Sometimes
me.
It's Russian bots attempting to stoke racial tensions in the US on Twitter. Sometimes it's comedians using phrases they think sound funny. Sometimes it's corporate ad execs mashing up everything they think is teen speak. Babies on fleek. Okay, but my they do though. And speakers of Black English will immediately know that you're faking it, just like most of you would notice immediately if I will start mix-upping my tenses in regular the English. That's what you sound like to Black Americans when you be saying, "Today's weather be like sunshine." The thing about language and linguistic ideologies, though, is that it's never really about the people. So if Black English had less tense aspect and mood marking, people would say it's because those people are intellectually inferior and they can't do all the grammar that we sophisticates do. But when it has more, even if I can convince you of that, it's easy for people to keep the disparagement but flip the reason. Those people are intellectually inferior, and so their language doesn't have the elegant simplicity of ours.
That's so true. That's exactly how they be saying. I mean, I be getting comments sometimes and people be saying, "Oh, you speak posh," or "I speak proper," and I probably do pronounce some words properly or whatever. And there's words that we definitely don't pronounce properly. I know I don't pronounce properly. You know, I say water like your typical British person. And I guess maybe the posh people over here would be like, a bottle of water. I don't know. So maybe. But at the same time, it's not, like you said, it's not based on colour. I think it's just based on your area, For everyone in London, typically black, white, Asian, don't really matter. You all speak pretty similar, I think there's a slight nuances between north and south, obviously, and stuff like that. But for the most part, you speak similar. If you go to Liverpool, they all got the same accent. You go Essex, they all got the same accent. Whether it's colour don't really matter. I guess it's just your environment.
To quote a famous speaker of Black English who you probably don't think of that way, "You can't win. And you can't win, child. You can't break even. You can't get out of the game. You can't win, you can't break even, and you can't get out of the game."
First of all, I've never heard of that person, so please don't kill me in the comments. But it sounds like a good song. What did he say? You can't win, you can't be given.
You can't win, you can't break even, and you can't get out of the game.
You can't win, you can't break even, and you can't get out of the game. That's a solid phrase.
There's a lot more that I could say about this. So much more that it could fill a book. So if you're interested in that book, definitely drop a comment. I've already written chapters about the history of Black English, regional dialects and homegrown flavor, how racism and the culture wars have shaped the academic study of it in weird ways, and an entire chapter.
I'd want to know a bit about that.
So if you want to hear about the time a middle-aged white guy blurted out, "Bye, Felicia," to a Black linguist friend of mine, and what happened next, you're going to want to get a copy of this book.
What is the phrase? What is the context of "Bye, Felicia" anyway? That was just a meme, innit?
If you like what I'm doing with the channel, you can...
I do like what you're doing with the channel. This was very informative. Sure. This is very informative, very thought-provoking. And yeah, as always, I give my honest and humble opinion. So please don't hate me in the comments. But yeah, this is definitely very, very thoughtful. I'd be interested to see if he's got a sort of video on British Black English, or whether there is much of a difference. Because I don't know, sitting over here, I don't feel like there's too much of a difference. But each to their own. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'm going to be checking out a lot more videos like this, a lot more random, not even random, but a lot more sort of cultural and difference sort of videos, because I'm interested, I'm curious, I like learning stuff. So that's it for this video. Make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button, like the video if you like the video, and I'll see you on the next one.